Hello, my name is Jonathan Forster and welcome to the Multi-Story Thinking podcast on interior design. I'm an interior designer and educator. My job is to improve quality of life and productivity by helping people to create beautiful and practical spaces to live and work in. The Multi-Story Thinking podcast takes an educational slant to the interior design world. If, like me, you are curious about how things are done within the industry, how people got their breaks and how they've developed their careers, and get some top tips and advice, then this is a podcast for you. So sit back, relax, as we help unravel the mysteries of interior design. Kay Sargent is a director of workplace for HOK, global design, architecture, engineering and planning firm with a network of 24 offices on 3 continents. She leads teams creating innovative workspaces and has pioneered a neurodiverse-friendly approach to shaping spaces that support the full range of neurotypical and neurodivergent employees. In this episode, we discover the 3 key things shaping our thinking in the way we design spaces, how the application of science can help drive better decision-making, why a test, pilot and measuring approach could revolutionise our approach to office refurbishment, the importance of options, choices and control in creating diverse spaces that fit your employees better, and we discover the dangers of becoming a potted plant.
Hello. How are you today?
I'm fantastic, Kay. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you very much. We got some snow here.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it's all good.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Is it brilliant? I don't know.
It's brilliant when you don't have to go out in it.
Yes. Is it
but
like...
it's brilliant when you get to stay home.
Yeah. Is it like proper snow? How much have you got?
Well, we got 10 inches the other day and we got 3 more today. Yeah, it's like proper snow. It's good.
So, I mean, if we had like a fraction of that, it would be total shutdown here.
Well, I think the only reason it isn't total shutdown here is because we're already in total shutdown.
It can snow as much as it likes. Yeah.
I know. So where are you based?
I'm based in Devon, in the southwest of England.
Oh, lovely. Well,
Yeah.
I'm based right outside of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I'm near Exeter, if you know any of the cities.
Yeah, nice.
Washington.
Good.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me. It's not too early for you, is it? It's
No.
very civilized. I did one the other day with someone in Bali. I had to get up really early for that. But
No.
I thought 9 o'clock's quite nice and civilized.
It is. It's actually very generous of you. I even had breakfast and I've already had my tea, so I'm all good.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to just ask you a few questions about stuff and we can just see how we get on. And
Yeah, sure.
I know there's like a massive amount of stuff that you could say, I'm pretty sure. So the big one, of course, is the pandemic. But I was really more interested initially in your work around neurodiversity.
Yes.
And actually, when I was looking on your website, the HOK website, I was quite pleased to see how you're describing the interior design work as sort of creating multi-dimensional experiential environments shaped by the people who use them, which sort of indicates, first of all, like there's some real attention to what you're creating, but also who you're creating it for, people.
Yeah.
And
you mean we shouldn't just be doing warehousing of people anymore, that we actually really need to think about who we're designing for.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess neurodiversity takes that even deeper, where you're looking into the people, you're more into the people than perhaps we would normally do.
Yeah, so I would say there's 3 things that have kind of converged over the last few years that have really culminated to where we are today and is shaping our thinking going forward. Several years ago, and I mean, 10 plus years ago, we really, as interiors, and look, interior designers always design from the inside out. We always think about the human perspective, and we're designing for people, and we are acutely aware of that. But there was a real crunch for densifying space and getting as many people in because of this notion that real estate is so expensive. But we have been talking for the last decade that the most expensive thing in any organization is your people. 80% of a company's money goes to their people. Only 10% goes to real estate and 10% goes to IT. So if you're squeezing your people to save on real estate and you're putting them in situations where they may not be as effective or productive, you're missing the bigger picture, and you could actually been costing your company more money than you're actually saving it. So that's number one, is that we need to think from the human perspective, and we need to have human-centric design. Then we were asked a really interesting question about 5 years ago, and that was, how do you design for someone that is ADHD? And I had an answer to that because we've done a lot of education spaces where we do have to consider that. But when it came to the workplace, I didn't really have a good enough answer. And I don't like not having a good answer. So we started to do a tremendous amount of research, and we found that there was a real drought of any substantive information about how to do that. And I think there's multiple reasons for that. There's a stigmatism around it. A lot of people don't want to announce to their employer that they are, they have any kind of special needs or requirements. And quite frankly, it went undiagnosed for a very long time. So people didn't even know that they were. And they figured we could, I can handle it. Well, this is not something that you outgrow. You don't just, when you turn 18, it doesn't go away. And so it wasn't really being addressed. So we started to do a tremendous amount of research. And I think now we have just launched our 6th research initiative into our findings as far as the neurodiverse population. So that was number 2, and that is forming the way that we are designing as well. But before the pandemic, we started to shift a little bit towards sensory intelligence. And sensory intelligence is not just for people that are neurodiverse. Every human on the planet is receiving sensory information: taste, smell, visual stimulation, touch. And we all respond to each of those differently and in a unique way. And people that are neurodiverse tend to have more extreme responses to those stimulation. But even neurotypicals can be affected by sound or visual stimulation in different ways. Hence why some people can sit in crowded cafes and concentrate and do just fine, where other people are like, oh my gosh, I can't handle this, and they shut down. So we really started to shift our focus more towards that sensory intelligence and sensory stimulation. And then the third thing happened: the pandemic hit. Well, now we are living in a time where everybody has a heightened sensitivity to their surroundings, to touch, to how close you are to each other, to smells. And so that sensory stimulation takes on even a greater importance. So all of those things are converging to really change the way we are starting to address designing of spaces.
I think it's really fascinating and great to see that rising up as an area of concern, because I think it seemed to me that interior design for a lot of the time was about what it looked like and maybe about how it functions, but not necessarily about how it makes people feel when they're in those spaces, which is why there are successful spaces and there are unsuccessful spaces, and no one really knows why, because no one's really looking at the core thing of how it's affecting people's emotions, and I think that's really nice to see that you're exploring that in more depth.
Well, Jonathan, I think you, unfortunately, there are still a lot of people that just care about what it looks like. And not that, having a space that looks gorgeous isn't important, but for a long time, the interior design industry really was kind of the art of design. But there is a science to what we do. Color impacts people in a very specific way. There are principles and there are elements of design, And as designers, we learn those and we need to apply those. And what's been lacking, I think, is some of the evidence-based findings that really help drive to better decisions. And so what we've really been focused on is why. And I'll share with you just what helped me on my personal evolution to that. When you're designing for someone and it's their personal residence, their opinion and what they like absolutely really matters. The science matters too, but it matters. When you're designing for a corporate space, I can't take into consideration what every single individual in that corporation likes. And if I design it for what one person likes, that's irrelevant. And so what we as designers need to do is what works for your company. So we really focus in on what are your goals and objectives as a company? What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to be warm and friendly? Are you trying to be welcoming? Are you trying to be intimidating? Are you trying to, what are you trying to project? What is that feeling that you want people to have? And then we can design and craft a solution to that. I can design spaces that you'll never want to leave. I can design spaces that you want to be in for 5 minutes and then you'll absolutely want to leave. And, think about McDonald's designed their chairs to be comfortable for no more than 15 minutes because they wanted you to leave so other people could sit down, where Starbucks takes a very different approach. And so we as designers are really tapping much more into that science of design. And now we are faced with a whole new challenge. And that is people finally have really embraced this notion that, wow, I really can work from anywhere. Why do I need to go to an office? And there's absolutely great reasons to go to shared spaces and offices. But we have to now create spaces that are enticing enough and offer you something you can't get someplace else to make you want to come there and be there, because we now have a workforce that is very empowered and has options and has choices. So we can no longer just take for granted that you have to show up at the office. And so it doesn't really matter how great or bad of experience you have there. We have to ensure that we're creating amazing spaces that are on target and are maximizing the potential to really draw people in and to help companies and individuals be successful.
You've got people been spending all that time at home. They've had their eyes open to another world, haven't they? Of slightly more control, perhaps less time commuting, more time with the family. I mean, there are pros and cons to that.
Absolutely, there are pros and cons to that. I find it really interesting when COVID first started, IFMA did a survey and they found, the number of people that are like, wow, this is amazing. I want to continue to work from home forever. A year later, that number dropped a little bit. And the number of people that said, I never want to work from home again, actually tripled because it doesn't work for everybody. And I think, I think we should be applying a little bit of science here. Companies are asking their employees what they want. That's a dumb question. Just like I would say, what do you like? Okay. Those aren't questions I think we should be asking. I think we should be asking what works for you and how do we ensure that you're successful as an individual, but also that the business thrives? Because not everybody is well suited to work at home. Only about 40% of the entire workforce can even work from home, right? You've got a lot of people. It's hard to work in a lab, or if you've got specialty equipment, or if you're working in a restaurant or whatever. So only 40% of the population, the workforce, can work from home. Of that, you've got a lot of people that their home environment isn't conducive to it. You've got people that their personality isn't conducive to it. They feel isolated, they feel lonely, they need direction, they're not self-starters. They need to be with other people and they need direction. And then you've got certain people that by the nature of their job, and I find it interesting because I find myself in these discussions many times, and it's not an either or, it's not everybody work from home, everybody, work in. I mean, for most people, there's kind of a soft spot. But a lot of the people that are saying, well, you can work from home forever, they are often people that are doing heads down individual work, sole practitioners, researchers. Of course you can, but I work in a team. I have a group of individuals. I have people in the field that need answers. We're doing very, very creative things, and we're bouncing ideas off of each other, and we're processing stuff, and we're innovating and ideating and creating and mentoring and passing on that information and sharing that information. Where's that detail? Where's that? That's harder to do in isolation.
Yeah. It can work, but it's never as good as the real thing, isn't it? I find a face-to-face, in other words.
Yeah, and I think it's hard. I think there's a few things. First of all, everybody's talking about productivity. Yes, you can be productive working from home. We've known that for a long time. But the challenge is it comes at a cost. Most people that work from home tend to work 10 hours longer than their office-bound colleagues. And it's not a coincidence that the average commute is 10 hours a week. People just they're working longer. They're sitting in one place stagnantly. And I think this is part of the reason why we have massive burnout right now, because you are on 24 hours a day staring at a Zoom call, not moving, and that's not good for you.
Yeah.
And it's not just about productivity, it's about creativity and innovation. Most CEOs are worried about, can they innovate fast enough to stay relevant today? And so the ability to innovate is harder when you're not together. And the other thing that nobody is really talking about is the quality of what is being produced. And secretly, I will say that a lot of CEOs are really worried about the quality is dropping, because you don't have that cross mentoring. You don't have that mix of ideas. You don't have somebody looking over your shoulder. You don't have somebody you can instantly ask that question to, or you're multitasking. We are all, multitasking. I mean, just get on a Zoom call and notice how many people don't turn their cameras on, and you're sitting there, what are they really doing? And they're half listening to you and half doing something else. And then we wonder why everything is full of errors. So it's not just about what we're producing. It's it's the quality of it, and it's, are we innovating and are we staying relevant? And then you've got that whole thing about social capital. So social capital, I think when we left the office, we left with a certain amount of social capital, but that is eroded over time. And you don't connect with people the same way over Zoom. You just don't. We've never met. So you may not understand my body language, and I may not understand yours. And I might be thinking, wow, is he really listening to what I'm saying? He doesn't seem maybe he doesn't like what I'm saying. And you get in your own head, and then you start pivoting and changing.
Yeah.
And when you know people, when you're physically with them and you can understand them and you have those social interactions, and it's not all about the work, right? You understand people at a deeper level, and you build more social capital.
Yes.
And it that helps build trust and bonds that lead to open up and innovation. And that is suffering right now.
I think there's a real sort of challenge there, because when you're just looking at the top quarter of a person's body, you can't really read the full experience, can you? But also, we're sat here, I'm just thinking about when I'm working in a collaborative space, I'm moving around, I'm come and have a look at this, and we're having to sit here on our chairs, we're just doing our backs in, aren't we? And I'm a bit worried if we go through the whole hour, I won't have stood up for 60 minutes. It's all that sort of thing that, where a more agile workspace would provide that. And that's what your design work on, typically workspaces at the forefront of the sort of trends of agile working are multi sort of disciplinary spaces, aren't they? They're different forms, you've got to move around. When you're working from home, you're basically in the same place, aren't you? Trying to do that different types of work in one zone. So that's got to be a sort of negative, really.
Absolutely. We're like potted plants.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not good. I mean, there are a lot of people that are kinetic learners or thinkers. They can't think or process unless they're active and or moving. And so sitting on a Zoom call is like just a kiss of death. there are a lot of people, specifically people that are neurodiverse, that have a real hard time with eye contact. And so being on Zoom and feeling like everybody is staring right at you, not just one person is staring at you, but you've got 20 people staring right at you, can be really overwhelming. And just even the way that we take in information and process information, I think. I find it really funny. I went to a conference. There was a brief window in the fall where we actually could get out and we could go to some conferences, and I was presenting, and I literally, I'm always moving anyway when I'm presenting, and I'm very animated, but I almost was like running around the room in circles because I'm like, oh my God, I can move, woohoo! And I just went nuts. And then at the end, I was exhausted. I mean, have you stood for 2 hours? I mean, I'm like, for 18 months, I barely stood during the day. So having to stand someplace was just like, I can't do this. And it was just like, wow, you realize then what a toll this is really taking on us.
Yeah, you're not fit enough to do real life.
Yeah. Then when we do get out of our box, we just go nuts.
So there's a whole lot of challenges around the pandemic, which have sort of accelerated a lot of trends, haven't they? But the neurodiversity thing, how does that fit in as a tool to help us move forward then, as we go back to hopefully back into the offices?
Yeah, I think we take a lot of what we learned and we applied for people that are neurodiverse. And there's a great saying, when you design for the extreme, you benefit the mean. Meaning, if I can accommodate, everybody's and their unique requirements, everybody can benefit. And so creating environments that give people options and choices and control really helps everyone, especially now that everyone has this heightened sensitivity. People are going to come back with very mixed feelings. Some people are going to feel perfectly fine and come right up to you and hug and, hey, how are you? And other people are going to be like, whoa, like, you need to stay away from me. And so creating environments that allow that balance, I think, is going to be really important. And now it's not a small, it's not the micro, or it's not the neuro minorities anymore. It's the entire population that is being affected by these sensitivities. And I think we're also much more acutely aware of that now. So a lot of the research that we've done has really helped us design spaces that are going to be more impactful going forward. And we learned through the pandemic that our clients that had embraced activity-based working or free choice environments were able to adapt more quickly and get back more easily because they didn't have assigned work points. They didn't have to worry about, well, now I got to spread everybody out, because Johnny's desk is assigned right next to, Betty's desk. And, they were able, they'd already done that and they'd already embraced that. And so it was easier. And we see a lot of our clients right now that are really trying to figure out, how do they do that and how do they create those environments? I will say this, though. I will say I was disappointed and encouraged at the same time after going to a series of conferences in the fall. So I went to CoreNet Global and IFMA and Infocom and the ASID Design Summit and RealCom, several conferences that happened. Everybody kind of squeezed them in November, right? And so went to all of those. And the general takeaway was, so nobody really has any answers. And I found that annoying because I think we do have a lot of answers. I think we've learned a lot. I think we've learned a lot more than people want to acknowledge or admit. But I think people are afraid right now to put a stake in the ground because the ground is still shifting and it's still moving and people don't want to make a mistake. And I think we need to just embrace this notion that we are living in a world now where things are constantly changing, but that doesn't mean we get to do nothing, right? And so what I found encouraging was that people were accepting this notion that, look, we're going to go through a period of testing. And in Europe, where you all have shorter leases and you build, space differently than North America, maybe that's not as revolutionary, but in North America, where you typically have 10-year leases and you're building from slab to slab, and it's very extensive, for people to acknowledge that you're going to take a risk, you're going to experiment, and you're going to pilot, that is a big step. And if people are more willing to experiment and pilot, I'm all for that, because we should have been doing that all along, right?
It's very hard to introduce that, though, to the cycle of refurbishment, because typically projects come and go and finish, don't they? And no one wants to then keep it going. Testing is a great idea. I think that's how you develop designs, isn't it? But having the confidence and perhaps the budget as well to evolve a design over time just doesn't ever happen, does it? I don't think.
Yeah, well, and what that means, it means some critical things, right? So it means that we need to budget differently, right? A project doesn't start and end, and then you never put a dollar towards it, right?
Yeah.
It means that you need to shift money so that you've got a little bit of money every single year, so you can continually tweak or adjust. Because if you're going to pilot and test, first of all, you have to be able to measure it. So that's the other thing. We got to be able to measure it. And then why get a result and a finding if you're not going to do anything? So in a sense, you're really committing to saying, we're going to test something and we're going to change it if we need to change it.
Yeah.
So you are now committing to doing something and shifting on a more regular basis, and to testing and monitoring and measuring it. And that doesn't sound that crazy, but we have to totally rethink how we measure and monitor things in our industry, because historically it's been cost per square foot or square meter, churn rate, things that are really real estate related. And those are the easy things, but that's not what really matters. What we're trying to do is, did we attract the right people? Did we retain people? Did we improve speed to decision making? Did we have access to more decision makers or to leaders? Did we improve mentoring? Did we improve engagement or happiness or productivity or innovation? Those things that are harder to measure than just cost per square foot, people's per square foot, things like that. And so I think we need to do a heavy lift now to really shift our metrics from being real estate centric to human centric. And then we need to follow through, figure out appropriate ways to do that, come up with some consistency, and then move forward, and then shift and have a willingness to do something about it when we find out something isn't working.
Yeah, I think that process of evolution would be brilliant, because all of the office fit out projects I've ever done, I've arrived when the office is in a state of absolute decline. It's not working anymore. It's been cobbled together and adjusted to a point where it's no longer coherent. You then refresh it, and then you hand it back to them, and then it steadily decays, doesn't it? Sort of.
Right. Okay. Well, here. So, and let's just talk about that for a minute. Okay. So, what's the average lease in London?
Oh, well, we'd be looking at, and
not now, because now they're shorter. But over the last 10 years, what would you say the average lease was?
Well, I would say probably 5 to 10 years. You've got break calls after 5, possibly.
All right. So let's say 5 to 10 years. In North America, it's 7 to 10 years. Sometimes it's 15, even 20. Okay. All right. So that means that the workplace is changing, let's say every 7 to 10 years. Okay. But we know that the workforce is changing every 5 years. They say what you learn your freshman year of university is obsolete by the time you graduate. Okay. So the workforce is evolving. Our businesses are changing every 3 years. Okay. Think about how many companies, you think about banks and the evolutions. They've gone from, being financial institutions. Now they're fintech. Every companies are constantly having to renovate and ideate and evolve to stay relevant. And technology is changing. It used to be 18 months. Some say 12. It feels like 6. It feels like every day to me. But, it's changing that rapidly. So everything within the workplace, the business, the workforce, the tools is changing much more rapidly. But the workplace place is only changing once every 7 to 10 years, that's the anchor. It's not staying relevant. And we, often people err on the side of being conservative because they don't want to be too crazy. So they're already behind the curve by the time they've moved in.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to be a little bolder. We need to experiment a little bit more. We need to create environments that can be refreshed and or be more agile, to be more responsive to what's happening. I mean, the average life of the average company today, believe it or not, is only 7 years. Because you think about all the businesses that start with the intention of being bought or acquired. So if I'm a startup company, why do I want to sign a 7 to 10 year lease when I may not even be in existence in 3 or 4 years? And that's my goal.
Yeah.
And why do I want to buy furniture that is going to last 20 or 30 years? And why do I want to buy technology that I'm going to have forever, but I know it's going to be outdated next year? Our entire process and the entire way we deliver spaces needs to be rethought. Access should be the new ownership. Why? I tell our clients, why would you want to own anything knowing the speed at which everything is changing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole sustainability conversation around there, isn't it, of use of resources, and I just was at a project this week where we're looking at a load of furniture that sat there inherited from the previous sort of regime, and it's not really appropriate, but they're worried about what do we do with it? How do we recycle it? And these things are outlasted the lifespan of the previous owners. It's like it's a lot of waste of resource.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of the research then into I'm interested in the research into neurodiversity. How did you go about doing that? Is that a field that's difficult to get into, or, where did you start?
Well, it's difficult for multiple reasons. Number one, there's a lack of information out there. And 5 years ago there was. Now there's a lot more information out there, which is great and really exciting. But when we started to do a bunch of research, and we found that there really wasn't a lot of information. And so we had to cobble together our expertise. We had to talk to a lot of people that were neurodiverse. We tapped into that network. We did a lot of reading and a lot of searching and extrapolating information, and kind of pulled together a lot of that with the help of many, many, many experts, right? So we tapped into the experts, and most of the expertise was really about onboarding or operationalizing, and really more geared towards inviting people into your space, and how do you get people in, and how do you hire, and how do you change those practices operationally. It did not really address the built environment, but we have the expertise in the built environment and understand, how color impacts people, sound impacts people. So we applied our knowledge and our expertise to what we were trying to achieve. And that's really how we came up with some of the initial reports. We have done multiple surveys. And right before COVID, we actually were going to start doing some pilots. But of course, then everybody went into lockdown. So most of those pilots got put on hold. But it's really hard because most people, if you want to do a pilot in an office and you want to do a test, you don't know who's neurodiverse and who isn't. And even the individuals, 50% of adults that are neurodiverse don't even know that they are. So they don't know that they are. So it makes it really hard. And there's a lot of sensitivity around what you can and cannot ask. So the research that we're doing right now is all around neuropersonas. And it's really understanding and identifying what are the big issues. Does sound impact more people? Is it tactical? If we cut the information and slice it in different ways, does it affect different generations in different ways, or genders in different ways, or different neurodiverse categories in different ways? So we're doing a lot of research on that right now. And we've had to tap into a lot of the organizations and agencies that do hiring and placement for people that are neurodiverse, because their clients are, and have all self-identified. So that's just another layer and another challenge that we've had to kind of navigate to go through this. But now there's a whole lot of people that are very, very aware of this. And a lot of stuff is now starting to come out of the woodworks, which I think is really, really exciting, because I think is a really important topic to be addressing.
Yeah. How do you distill that range of individual information? I mean, there must be so many different versions of neurodiversity. And you mentioned earlier about, you can't design an office to suit every individual. How do you sort of generalize, if that's the right word, or how do you create something that will sweep up as many as possible? That must be a problem, isn't it, in terms of directing your design to cover as many people as possible when they're all so diverse?
You've hit the nail on the head. And honestly, the crux of this, the big takeaway is, when you think about the range of people we are designing for, and let's even go outside of neurodiversity. When you think about, the age spread, we're designing for 20-year-olds and 80-year-olds. We're designing for men and women. We're designing for introverts and extroverts. We're designing for people that are 300 pounds and people that are 100 pounds. We're designing for people that are hyposensitive to their environments and ones that are hypersensitive to their environments. And then you've got, sound, visual, tactile, all of those things. It's overwhelming. And I think this is part of the reason why nobody has tackled this topic to now. But to me, the good news is that a workspace isn't just one setting. It is a variety of settings. And so the only way that we can design for the vast fluctuation of the human population that we are designing for today is to create a variety of spaces and give people options and choices and some control over how they do that without overwhelming them with too many choices, right? That's actually the hardest. And so it's about understanding what are the important things that we should focus on. So our research really shows that there are 6 modalities of work, 6 different, whether it's 6 things that you do. So you might be doing concentrative work, you might be doing socializing, you might be in meetings, creative, the 6 modalities. And then we need to create a hypo and a hypersensitive version of both of those, and then some fluctuations in there to create kind of this palette of spaces that people can go to. And even if I'm neurotypical, but I have a sensitivity to sound and I need visual order, then I can find a space that suits my needs if I have options and choices and control. And here's the crux of it, right? If you aren't giving people options, then basically you're assuming everybody is one typical person. I defy anybody to define what the typical person is today. Who is the typical person that you're designing for? There isn't one, right? You can't do that anymore. You can no longer say it's a 35-year-old, white male. I mean, it's just, that's not the population we're designing for anymore. It's so diverse. And so we need to create spaces that enable everybody to find their space that fits them. And if I'm assigning individuals work points, and let's say, and this is what happens in a lot of offices, I hire you. I really don't know anything about you except your job qualifications. And I assign you a seat right on the main corridor at the end of a row next to some really loud, crazy people. And there's lots of visual distractions and, sound, but you happen to be hypersensitive to those things. I have no way of knowing that, but now I've just put you in a situation where you are destined to fail or to constantly be challenged and will never really be able to be at your best. Versus if I let you choose where you sit, you might decide, I'm going to sit over against the wall where I get limited distractions and it's, there's a little bit of noise there, but I like that because I need a little bit of energy around me. So I'm okay with that, right? So it's about giving people options, choices, and control.
That's quite a difficult thing to manage, I should imagine. first of all, asking the right questions, and then for the people you're asking the questions of, having the confidence to say what they think, because, and also recognizing it in yourself. I think it's a whole sort of minefield of problems to overcome there. How do we go around sort of, not creating a stigma around this and opening up the information so that everyone can work out the best way to set things up?
Well, I think intuitively we naturally migrate to spaces that we feel more comfortable in. So when you think about when you go to a restaurant, most of us have some preference.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's a lot of people that don't like sitting with their backs to the open space. And they like sitting with, so that they can survey things and they can see things, et cetera. And instinctively, you just kind of feel that. You don't really realize that. But when somebody says, where do you want to sit? Oh, I want to sit over there in that booth. Like, you don't hesitate, right? You know exactly where you want to sit. Intuitively, I think we know this. Whether we have acknowledged it and really understand why we've made that choice or why we gravitate to things, I think we are less in touch with that. And I think very few people really understand what their neurosensitivities or their sensory intelligence is. There is a test that you can take. And we had 40 people on our team take this test. And it was really eye-opening. For our team who has been talking about this for 5 years, we took this test and it blew everybody out of the water, because it was like, of course you're sensitive to sound. That's why you hate sitting, X, Y, and Z. Or of course, we just found out things about ourselves that was like, it seemed so obvious, but it had to be kind of pointed out. And so part of the pilot that we were going to do is, if people were armed with the right information, would they more quickly make better choices versus someone who didn't and just intuitively had to navigate to the right space eventually.
Yeah.
And so we're still hoping to do some of that research and to see if people really understand what their neuros and sensitive intelligence is. Can it help them make better decisions in the workplace? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. But I think intuitively people know what they like and they don't like, and they'll navigate to the right spaces.
There's a mixture of those kind of design strategies to create those spaces, and then ideally some operational sort of changes to how people manage those people within those spaces. You've sort of loosening up of that, I think.
Yeah, in the first report that we did, we kind of identified 3 buckets, 3 areas: spatial, operational, and individual adjustments. And I think it's a combination of those 3 that create the most successful outcomes. So for instance, I can design an amazing space, but if you don't operate it in the right way, it's not going to be successful. And the individual, if somebody can't make the individual adjustments that they need, they will be less successful. Mm-hmm. So our expertise is really on the spatial side. We have partnered with people in the HR world to really help understand the operational elements and have some recommendations in there. But there is a lot about what you can do from an HR standpoint to adjust your hiring practices, to make people feel more welcome, to train your staff, to get everybody on board. And then that third bucket of the individual adjustments. I mean, if I have a little bit of control, if I can record meetings so I can go back and listen to them later, or if I can put on headphones so I can control the sound, or if I can choose where I sit, those things empowered with some knowledge really can help individuals feel much more comfortable and situated in a space.
It's a cultural shift then, isn't it? In terms of the design process, did you have to adapt the way you were designing once you had all this kind of research? How did you shift your approach?
Yeah, I think it was just about making our teams aware.
Yeah.
It's about being conscious of something. So I'll give you a perfect example. I think most offices have embraced the concept of phone rooms or quiet rooms, right? It's just kind of the lowest hanging fruit, and almost everybody has, phone rooms or quiet rooms for people that can't take too much noise or stimulation. So we've designed these phone rooms for people. But then, as designers, we want things to be exciting and we want them to be, great. So we put bright colors and crazy patterns in these rooms so they're not boring. So I've designed a small area for someone who can't take overstimulation. And now I put them in a box with crazy patterns and bright colors. And I've literally, for a lot of people, just absolutely short-circuited them. And when you realize that, you're like, oh, yeah, that's obvious, of course. But if you don't think about it that way, then, people make that mistake all the time. And so it's just about understanding and making conscious choices. So we have developed a guideline that says if you're trying to create a concentrative space for someone that is hypo-sensitive, here are the things you should consider. If you're designing a space for someone that is hypersensitive, here are the things that you should consider. And it has to do with, massing, patterns, texture, sound, color, materiality, all of those things we've taken into account and made some suggestions about things that people should consider. And nobody can do them all, but it's just about making conscious choices and understanding the ramifications of your design decisions.
The fine line between distraction and sort of, almost like you need something in the background. Some people need something in the background just to focus, or, I don't know whether it's like symmetry of the space or a rhythm of materials or fittings. The fine line between that and something that has gone over the top. And that varies from person to person as well, doesn't it? It's like,
well, the easiest way to describe this, you think about a restaurant. Again, I'm going to go back to the restaurant analogy. If you walk into a restaurant and there's only one other couple in there, it's actually kind of creepy, and you can hear everything they're saying, and acoustically it's like, wow, that's not good. On the opposite end of the spectrum, if you go to a place that is so loud, you're screaming at the person you're sitting across from the table from, that's not a pleasant experience either. But most people like to go to a space that has some energy in it, right? And so you want to go to a place that has a little bit of hum. And so there are a lot of people that, given the choice of working from home or going and working, like let's say in the lobby of a hotel room versus your room, most people will go to the lobby, right? Because they like having that energy around them.
Yeah.
Or they'll go to a Starbucks or a cafe or a coffee shop because they like that energy. We are human beings. We kind of thrive off of that common energy. And a lot of people really need that. And so we need to create spaces that have a different level of energy. We need quiet rooms. We need buzzy spaces. We need really social areas. And the acoustics and the materiality and the volume of those spaces and, the lighting, everything should fluctuate and change to really set the right mood to achieve that right atmosphere and that experience.
Is that something that has been always going to be affected at all by the pandemic when we go back? Is there going to be any shift in that, do you think, in terms of it being more about socializing and collaboration, or do you think we're just going to get the same sort of versions, perhaps on a smaller scale? I think what we're seeing here is not as many people going in, so you don't need as much space, so you can actually reduce your footprint. But there doesn't seem to be any major shift yet of what we're actually designing. We're just creating a smaller version of it.
So I'll make a prediction. I think we're social creatures and we like to be together. I think businesses thrive, many businesses, not all, but many businesses thrive when people are together. And I think there's incredible value in being seen and passing on information and being with your colleagues. And I think right now there is great hesitation because we've gotten into a new routine and we are shifting from one fixed routine to something that is unknown. And so there's great apprehension right now for the workforce. But I think eventually people will want to be back together again, and we will find a balance where people will be working remotely a day or two a week, but then wanting to come back together because they will see that value and they'll understand that it's important, I think, for the businesses. And I think there's a lot of reasons why remote work was really successful for some people before the pandemic, and it wasn't for other people. There is disparity. There is inequity from the people that are present and the people that aren't. And right now, we're all basing everything on the fact that we've all been in the same situation and people haven't experienced that inequity. But when that inequity comes back, and we can try to offset that inequity as much as we can, but it will still exist to some degree. And I think ultimately we're going to look back. I find it really interesting in the United States right now, there's a massive conversation about schools and should schools be open. And the common sentiment is, well, we know remote learning didn't work because of the inequity, and people weren't really as paying attention as much, and it was, there were distractions, and it just, we thrive on that social element. And I'm thinking, how long is it going to take us to apply that same logic to work?
Yeah,
because it's not an exact parallel, but it's damn close, and there is a benefit to being together. And right now we have a very empowered, apprehensive workforce that we're asking to transition into something that is unknown, and they don't want to do it. But ultimately, I believe that we will come back together because of all of those things we talked about, the social element, the social capital, the equity, all of those things. We'll find a new balance, but we'll be back. That's my prediction.
I was thinking about why people haven't made a more consciously brave decision is about not knowing what the answer is. And I think if we took that approach of prototyping and developing over time, that could ease the pressure on that, because we were looking at reconfiguring our teaching studios down at the university in Plymouth. And we're just thinking, right, this looks like a good idea. But then we're looking at each other and thinking, is this going to work? And we've got no idea. Is it going to work? We think it might do, but we're not sure. So we're just going to have to test it out. And then if it doesn't work, we'll change it. But that's quite a big thing for people to do when they're investing on a single project. I think when you're talking about changing the way we budget these things, if we could be a bit more flexible, then you could maybe testing things out would be great, wouldn't it? I think that's.
Yeah, and I think we also have to temper the results with this notion that right now there's a lot of apprehension, right? Yeah. I mean, nobody is acting normally right now, and we don't know what that new normal is going to be, and I hate that word, but we don't really know what that is, and so we have to have a little patience also. So I don't believe that people are as resistant to change as we think they are. What people hate is transition. Okay? Yeah. Nobody minds a new house. It's moving to the new house that you hate. I kind of feel like it's the end of summer. We all have to go back to school. It's like, summer's over, right? We have to shift from one mode to another. And it's that shift that we don't like. But we know that when we get back together, we'll be with our friends. We'll get to do cool things. It'll all be great. Okay. It's the shift. And what's happening right now is we are in an extruded transition with no clear end in sight and no clear thing to what we're moving to stated. It's like me telling you, you're going to move. I'm taking you out of your house. I'm not going to tell you when you're going to move into your new house or even where it's going to be, but just trust me. Nobody would sign up for that. And I think that's where we are in the workplace is there is no known outcome, and we like known outcomes, and there is no real timeline. And I think we all are just going to have to embrace that we're in some uncharted territory here, and we're going to have to be flexible, and we're going to have to go with it. But doing nothing is not an answer. And I think right now what I'm finding is there's we have an opportunity to really create better work environments going forward, and we need to be bold. We need to experiment. We need to acknowledge we're going to get some things right. We know a lot more than we think we do. We need to be patient with everybody who is experiencing all of this for the first time and give it some time and test things out. But inaction is not an answer. We need leadership, and we need people that are like, we're going to go on a journey and let's go, and get people excited about it.
That sounds great. I personally think going back to exactly the same as before can't possibly be the best solution. There must be something we've learned in this past few months.
No, and it'll actually be worse. And what we're finding is, A lot of spaces are underpopulated, so they feel dead. You feel like you're working on a Saturday. A lot of stuff has been put away because we were worried about, cleanliness and touching. And so these workspaces right now look very sterile, and they're actually worse. And so what we need to do is create compelling enough environments and understand, why are people coming back? And it's, whether it's for better ergonomics or better technology or access to other people or amenities or services or that energy or that camaraderie or whatever, focus on those things and create great experiences around those things, while we're enabling people to kind of, feel their way back into it and empowering them with options and choices. So it is a good fit. The workplace itself really has not kept up. And we have not advanced the workplace as rapidly as we could or should. Now is our opportunity to think differently, to engage, and to be bold as we go forward. If you think about, your car, you can start your car from inside your house, heat it up, walk down. It unlocks automatically when you approach it because it knows it's you, and everything in your car syncs to your preset preferences, your radio, your car seat, your mirrors, the temperature, everything. And your phone can even sync with your dashboard, and your information is there. In our workspaces, most of us are still crawling around under our desk trying to find an outlet. We are so behind in leveraging technology to enhance the human experience in workplaces. Now is our time to embrace that, to be bold, and to create better spaces that are better experiences where people really want to be.
That sounds awesome. And I think on that basis, I need to buy myself a newer car. I'd like to thank Kay for taking the time to speak to me. It's really refreshing to see her approach and understand a bit more about the research and the science behind the techniques that she's employing. This human-centered approach is really changing the way in which we look at workspace and how we design workspace, and it's much more responsive to the people that are actually using the spaces at a deeper level, both psychologically and emotionally. And this can only be for the good in terms of improving mental health and well-being and creating spaces that people really enjoy using. It's something that we're going to be pushing with the students of the interior design course at the University of Plymouth. We've already introduced them to sensory mapping and the psychological impact of design, and we're going to be pushing some of Kay's thinking and approaches towards them over the coming months. I'll put some links in the notes about some of the documents that Kay has been involved in putting together and some of the information on their website, which fills in the gaps and really helps you to understand their thinking and how you can start to implement ideas. If you'd like to know how to become a kick-ass interior designer, follow the links to the interior design course at the University of Plymouth, where we teach you to put people at the centre of the design process and create joyful and sustainable spaces to support well-being, health and happiness. I'd like to thank Dave Clark from I Am The How for production support and invaluable advice in the setting up of this podcast, Kay Hansen for her planning support and co-hosting role for these and our educational podcasts at the University of Plymouth, and Mark Frith for the music. I'd really like to hear your feedback on the podcast. Leave a comment and get in touch via the website or Instagram. Thanks for listening. Bye for now. Thank you.